Stacy. I'm happy to have you on today. You have officially completed the 1-year design and garment construction program. I'm excited for you and I'm also proud of you.
Thank
you. One of the reasons that I wanted to invite you on today is because you're definitely one of our more hardworking students. And as such, I think you have a lot of insight to share with others about what your experience was like at the Fashion Lab. So thank you for agreeing to do this, and I'm so happy to chat with you today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. All right, so we're gonna talk about like how you transitioned through the program, and to start with, we're gonna talk about the beginning. So in the beginning, before you started the Fashion Lab, what was going through your head? What was your life like? What were some of the fears and frustrations you had?
Oh, wow. Well, what was my life like? We had just moved a handful of times, so from Seattle to Florida and then to Atlanta. And the consideration of coming to Atlanta was like, oh my gosh, there's sewing schools here. Yes, I need to find one. I've been trying to put all of this together for years. I always love to tell the story of, I had foot surgery, and this is, 10 years ago, and YouTube had just kind of, was new, and discovered these sewing machines that had embroidery. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? I want to do this. And really fell in love with embroidery. So that was about 10 years ago. And as my skills grew with embroidery, I would get stuck or frustrated because it'd be like, well, I want to put this on a jacket, but I don't know how to take this apart or put it together to create something I want to create. And, my embroidery skills got better, but like my sewing skills weren't going anywhere. And not knowing where to start or how to begin was a struggle. And so I had investigated quite a few programs in Seattle and didn't find much that I wanted. Couldn't find anything in Florida. And so when we started researching Atlanta, it was very exciting to find the Fashion Lab, because it was just like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want. It's not, I don't need to take 3 years of art classes before we get to sewing. We were sewing the first day. And that was really important to me, to be able to begin to use those skills and start to build just right away.
Okay. All right. What were some of the things that you did? You mentioned that there were so many years that you were trying to kind of piece together some skills. What were some of the things that you did before starting?
There's a great sewing community in Seattle, and every month there was a group would get together, and you'd learn a new skill, or they'd share a new notion or something like that, and it would just be building on that, but it wasn't learning specific things. And so like over the course of these last 10 years, it was obtaining a serger and just mastering the serger, learning how to thread it like crazy. Which, threading a serger is not easy. I do love mine, but, learning how to, there was a lot of other basic skills that I was gaining, even just straight seams, quilting. I love to do in the hoop projects, which are where you build something in the hoop with the embroidery machine, or your bag, or, in fact, I'll just grab something real quick.
Okay.
It's not mine. But just as an example, so you stitch something out, you stitch your design, and then, you place the zipper, and next thing you know, you've got a zippered bag that you didn't have to sew together, which was great. But I let a lot of people influence me with their statements of, oh, pinning is bad, it's hard, they hated to hand sew anything. And so I kind of, caught on to that problem as well, where I would think that was hard. And now I love to pin. I love to, stuff that I thought I would hate, I love. It's been very rewarding to learn how to do those things without hang-ups.
And when you say pinning, what do you mean?
Oh, well, I used to sit down at the sewing machine. You know, I wasn't taught very well. It was like, you know, like seam allowance is something that I didn't quite understand. And the person who was telling me about seam allowances explained it in a way that didn't make sense. And so I was constantly screwing up. I love to make doll clothes. That was my, you know, like small scale. I still love making doll clothes. They're tiny, they're easier. But like I still couldn't set a sleeve in the doll clothes. Everything was sleeveless. But what was I at?
You were saying that you didn't, people were trying to talk you out of pinning. They said it was really hard and you didn't really like it.
I didn't quite understand how seam allowances worked. And I think I learned that at the Fashion Lab. I just didn't grasp how, like, you know, a half an inch was so important, and how to just, you know, adding that on or making sure it's there with your garment. That's just something I didn't know how to do.
Got it. So over the years, just to kind of wrap up what you were saying, over the years, you took a lot of sewing classes because you know you were passionate about it, but things were just still missing and you couldn't put it all together, and that was frustrating.
It's really, there's really a lot of put it all together programs in the market. Like, you know, you can't, like YouTube, you can go to and say, I need to know how to make a buttonhole. Well, you go and you learn that one buttonhole. You don't learn how to do the placket, to space them, to, you know, you have to pick up each skill one at a time. And you need that guidance that takes you through the whole process of how to put it all together. That's my main theme, is just putting it all together, because you only piecemeal things like that. There's not, you know, understanding the why of, you know, why you need a little stabilizer behind the button.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So why did you want to study fashion design? How long had you been thinking about fashion design, and why fashion?
A long time. I was a teenager and I went to a modeling school. I always thought I wanted to be a makeup artist, like, but you know, I grew up in the 80s and I had a terrible high school counselor who didn't let us dream, and made some other steps in my career and life that didn't really feed my creative soul. I've been knitting since, you know, I was like 12, and crafting everything you can imagine from that point on till now. And the sewing, when I put it all together, it's like that's where I feel my art can come to be. You know, a little bit of sewing, a little bit of embroidery, like the little board behind me is one of my favorite pieces. It kind of combines all of those things that I love, that, you know, it's a little bit of texture and shine and unique, that I really enjoy doing.
Okay, got it. Okay, so you've been thinking about fashion for a long time, but over the course of years, you didn't find yourself really going there. You did other things close to it.
Mom, I had to be mom for a while.
Right. Yeah, got it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had to prioritize the family.
Yeah. I recall working, you know, one of my jobs, and it was I sat there during this training and created like all of these different ideas for doll clothes, you know, just all these different things. And it was like, you should be paying attention to this. And it's just like, that wasn't where my passion was. And so now it feels good to be able to begin to pursue my passion. And
good. I'm so happy for you, Stacy. I'm so happy. So you mentioned that you've done a lot of moving around, and you ultimately ended up in Atlanta. And you said you were excited because there were other like sewing or fashion schools available. So in researching other schools, like, why did you ultimately choose the Fashion Lab?
Well, I think that it's cost effective. I think that's one, is it wasn't going to break the bank. I think that was important for me and in our, it's just, I love the fact that it was a year-long program, that it was an intense program. So it was twice a week. I could have gone 3 or 4 days. I loved it so much. Um, it was having the individual attention, having Marva, or, having someone hold your hand through these processes is very important. In some of the other schools, the programs are 25 students to one teacher, and I love to ask questions. I love to understand the why, and I know that that would not be a good fit for me. Knowing the class size was small, knowing that it's such a lovely little setting there that it just feels intimate. You feel taken care of. It's really a lovely place to learn. It's just a lovely space. And I think even when you walk in, it's just like, yeah, I like this here. I like the neighborhood's neat. It's like, there's a lot of pluses there.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you. All right. So let me ask you this question. It's your opinion. With the right effort, can someone who has never sewn anything before still succeed at the Fashion Lab?
Oh, definitely. I think it may take a little more work, but learning to sew is not impossible. It is not, anybody can do it. And history has shown us that everybody was sewing their own clothes forever. It wasn't, ready-made is a new concept, not necessarily an old concept. And I think you have to be open-minded and keep your head above water. You can't get down on yourself if you're not, you may have to work a little harder to keep up. You definitely need a machine at home. It's not something you can do without a machine at home. And maybe that, is a mirror of the machine you're using at school, or a home sewing machine. I would say a home sewing machine to start, just because there's still things you need to do on a home sewing machine that you can't necessarily do on an industrial machine. Moving the needle, that's one. I've loved mastering zippers, and that's the magic of moving the needle. So
that's good advice, Stacy. And you were talking about points of frustration and having to work harder if you're starting from a blank slate. So maybe now is a good time for us to transition into what was the middle of the program like. So if you can reflect on going through and being more at the middle part of the program, how had your perspective, your knowledge, and your skills change as you went through the program?
So about midway through, we had already done pattern making for quite a while, and I think there was a period of time where you're just like, I'm so sick of paper, And then we kind of progressed into that, taking that paper and then making something. And I think that was a big breakthrough for me. I really enjoyed when we would take a pattern, make it from the numbers, and then build that into a garment. I just thought that was the coolest part of that whole middle piece. Unfortunately, we did get hit with the pandemic right there in March.
Yep. Yeah, maybe let's talk about that a little bit. So in the middle of the program, you mentioned the pandemic hit us in about March of 2020, which is this year. Tell us what that experience was like. How did you feel in the beginning when you heard we were transitioning to some classes online?
I think initially it transitioned online. It was concerning that we were going to be able to hang in there. But the classes that we switched to online, some of them it was like, well, I'm glad I didn't have, because for me, I was taking the MARTA in and then walking about a half a mile to the school, which I highly recommend to anyone in normal times, because traffic is a nightmare. And it's a very relaxing experience taking the MARTA. So high recommend. The transition to being home meant, I didn't have the commute, so I could sleep in a little longer, and there was some
Yes.
perks to that too. But we did a lot of the drawing classes online, and intro to fashion business, the draping. I think there
How
was
did those classes go online? Because you are right. I do remember you guys were concerned as we were transitioning to some of those classes. How did it end up? How did those turn out?
I think it ended up good. I think there was, some that that there was a little bit out of order, and so like we were designing our final collection before we'd even thought about fabric or shopping, so that made it a little difficult for me trying to I used fabric I had at home. We couldn't go shopping, and I am very tactile, and it's hard to determine that over, online. And so, I don't know that my collection was as cohesive as I would have liked it to be, but it was fun to create. It was really fun to create. We came back and then had to go back home again. So there was, a little bit of drama, but we all rolled with it. And, after we came back into class, I started driving, but traffic wasn't bad at all. So that was, I missed the MARTA, but it was safe to drive. And at that time of the program, there was a lot more stuff to bring back and forth. So it was actually a benefit to not have to flop it on my back.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So tell me, a great benefit that you experienced that you hadn't expected.
Great benefits. Well, I think if you put it all together, I would say that, like, going from a sketch or a thought to an actual garment, like, even the jacket behind me, it's like from, the concept of, a leather insert, or working with wool. I love working with wool and leather. And so being able to combine the two in a way, that came from a sketch, like just a little doodle, and then a drawing, and then a pattern, and then fabric, and putting it all together. I didn't expect to feel as strong as I do today about it.
Got it. Okay, that's great. Tell us about any frustrations or challenges.
Oh, frustrations or challenges. I think for me, I just want more. I don't know that I had that many frustrations. I would say, sometimes
You must have had some frustrations, or like, was there any point of frustration learning anything brand new and then you had to work your way through it, or anything like that?
yeah, I would say, I guess the frustrations I have with myself were probably not taking as good of notes as I should have. Like, that today kind of frustrates me now, that, like, just a lot of times you're like, okay, I got it, and then you think you have it, and then 2 days later you're trying to replicate it again at home, and I can't do it. So that part would frustrate me. It still frustrates me. There are things that I wish I had practiced more. During, at the time. And so, like, Marva and I spoke about this a few weeks ago about, she would tell us, she'd practice, 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 just take it in, pull it out, put a zipper in, take it out. And there were things that I would practice, but I wish that I had practiced more.
Got it, got it. So you gave two good points of notes right there. You said write notes as you go through, and
Yes.
then you said practice, practice, practice. So that's good for anybody listening in who wants to know how best to prepare yourself for
Yes.
going through the program. So that's good. How much time, we spoke about practicing, so we can ask this next question. How much time do you think you spent practicing per week on average?
I would say I did a lot of homework, so probably 6 to 10 hours on homework. I would usually come home from school and just start in right away on my homework. And on Wednesdays, I wouldn't work, so it would just be completely doing what we did the day before, or completing something, or however that worked. I mean, usually you'd have homework. So, and then Thursday when I get home, same thing. I work on homework right away, and then spend a good chunk of time on Saturday and Sunday as well, if I wasn't working. And then, probably 6 to 10 minimum on homework. And then through the course, I would probably spend, 3 to 10 hours maybe on other things, whether I was sewing something for myself or kids or whatever, a quilt or something for work. I would be working on other projects as well too. So
Maybe like 10 to 20, depending.
yeah. And
Okay.
I would say I would probably I would love to have given myself more time, but I feel good about it.
Yeah, that's good. As I've said before, it's this field is something that you'll continue to learn and grow in for the rest of your life.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So that's good. All right. Let's talk about what were some of your favorite subjects or classes and why.
Well, I haven't talked about it, and I would say that learning Adobe was really fun. Challenging. It's challenging. I think you'd made some comment that like the first few days about it being like kindergarten. I'm just like, I think kindergarten was not like this. But it is definitely a skill that, like, I just didn't have the concept of it, especially with Illustrator. It's just, and I've found some following, like, continuing education stuff for it as well, because it is important, and it is a use it or lose it type skill. It's hard to retain it for a length of time if you don't go back and touch it. So yeah, I really enjoyed that class. I really enjoyed that class. What was the other class I wanted to touch on? Something that Rushika did. We did was this learning to draw when we got to our, like, past the hard part at the beginning. Like after your forms look a little more human.
So maybe advanced fashion illustration, was it?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was like they look like a person and they didn't have, like, funky body parts. I struggled with my proportions in the beginning, and like I can see one of my sketches over there on the other side of the room here, and it's like, no, she looks like a human from here. But I really enjoyed that because it was that process again of taking an idea that's in your head and being able to bring it to life. And then, and then the next phase, again, taking it from the sketch to a pattern to the actual fabric was really exciting.
Got it. Great. All right. And to wrap up the middle section, what has been, or what was the most exciting thing that you learned or accomplished?
Oh, middle part of the program. Well, I think when we put all our collection together and created our portfolio and had, like how to, the cost sheets, that, like, putting all of that together into a package, and starting to understand how it all came together. You can draw a picture, you can sew something, you can, you know, all of those things, but taking the whole collection of it all and putting it together is something that you just don't, I mean, like, you can't learn that on YouTube. You know, there's not a way to learn that stuff to understand how it all gets put together.
Got it, got it. Okay, all right. And now let's talk about more like the end of the program. And maybe this question is duplicative, but I'm asking it anyway. What have you accomplished or achieved, and what are you most proud of at this point?
Well, I my pants probably. I got a pair of wool pants in my collection, and they just turned out beautiful. I did a Hong Kong finish inside with some red silk, and I am just beyond tickled. I cannot wait to wear them when it gets colder, because I made them to fit myself, and they, you know, they have a beautiful welt pocket on the back, and you know, they're just very tailored. They're a cut that I've not seen at a store. They're, you know, it's just, it's what I wanted, and I'm really proud of them. I really, you know, it's, not all my pieces turned out like I wanted. Like this one's still, it needs some tweaking, but like those turned out like I wanted them to turn out, and I was really pleased with that.
Good. And just to kind of remind you of something we were talking about before we started recording, in the beginning of the program, you mentioned having like a love for embroidery and not being able to put it all together because you knew how to embroider, and that skill improved over time, but not your garment construction. But there is a particular item that you created while you were with us that kind of put that all together and felt like an accomplishment. You can talk to us more about that?
Yeah, so challenge piece I did. It has it's funny how you're inspired to do something, and then I went to go source the materials, and of course I couldn't find the colors I wanted or the fabrics I wanted. So, you know, things get tweaked after a while, and but in the end I am so pleased with how it turned out. It's, you know, purple silk, and I you know, sewed the bodice together and then embroidered this gorgeous lion on it, and it's lined with a hot pink with a horsehair braid in the hem. It was so cool to put it all together, to not need any help. You know, like I figured out how to do the shoulder strap without Marva guiding me, or having to watch anything. I managed to do everything on my own. It was really exciting. I'm so tickled with the result and cannot wait to make some more pieces like that. As I said before, I love embroidery, and, you know, Gucci is just like, oh, drool worthy stuff. And so I can only hope that someday my stuff gets compared to some Gucci items, and, you know, that would be cool.
Great, great. All right. So a sense of accomplishment with seeing that come full circle, and your embroidery skills and your garment construction skills kind of more being closer on par than they were in the beginning.
Yes.
Got it, got it. All right. So before starting the program, you mentioned you had some crafting skills but struggled with professional garment construction. Would you say you're feeling more competent and confident now?
Oh yes. Oh yes. The a hem is a great example. Like I didn't understand how to do um a blind hem. This is just a concept that escaped me on my sewing machines, and now I'm like, you know. The waistband, those little details where you're folding and you pull something out, you know, lining, like all that stuff I couldn't do before. I really enjoy, like I said earlier, enjoy working with leather, and being able to put a lining on it and manipulate to get the finish right is something I just didn't have before. And so it's really been great to have some of these finishing skills so things look nice. That
Good.
someone would actually wear them. It wouldn't. I made some pajamas for the kids when they were little. They were not cute.
Okay, great. So in terms of your fine sewing techniques and how to finish garments professionally, that's improved?
Yeah. Oh yes. Oh
That's
yeah.
good. Did you know how to make patterns before you started the
No.
program?
No. It is funny though, because for years I collected patterns, doll clothes patterns, because the girls had their dolls, and I've had, I had mine too. I have a couple of collector dolls, but I would cut out all these patterns and start to familiarize myself with, what the pieces were, because you think it's gonna look like a pattern piece doesn't always look like what you think it's going to look like. And so, we'd sit and watch sports, and I would just cut out the patterns, which was a great introduction to understanding what they look like, what a notch was. Some of those pieces that I know classmates or, other students maybe didn't quite understand what they were or why they were important. And that was just from, years of playing with these things and trying to build my skills and understand. Now if I want to make one of those patterns, it's already cut out and I can just throw it on some fabric. I know how to put it on the grain line and how to lay it out, how to, do the seams. And, I just didn't know how to do all that stuff before. And I remember making a pair of pants for one of the girls' dolls, and it probably took me 3 weeks to make these little pair of pants, but I was determined to finish them and make them look perfect. And they did, but yeah, I'd probably do 17 things different today, but, and it would only take me an hour to do it.
Good. So you found that you've gotten more efficient with your use of time in addition to improving your skills.
Yeah.
Great, great. How about your fashion sketching and illustration? Feeling better about that?
Oh, absolutely. As a creative, you always, sketch. I've always had a little book or a notebook or whatever where I've jotted down ideas or thoughts or how I want something to look. And but didn't have that connection, like understanding the 9 heads and how to make it look proportional. Like it's one thing to have it a little sketchy and then another to have it look right, like a human, an actual garment.
Makes
But
sense.
they look really good. I am pleased. I'm
Good.
very
Good. How about putting together a fashion portfolio? Did you understand that before, and do you understand it now?
I did not understand how to put together a fashion portfolio before. That was not anything I would have, understood. I, the collection piece, like I've watched enough Project Runway and all of those other shows to understand what they were doing, but they're missing that element. And I watched it this last season, as we were running through school, it was like, yeah, there's a lot of things they don't show you. like why is no one ever doing a muslin? Why is no one ever, they never show the pattern making piece, or like measuring the model. They always have the card and then things don't match up. And so there was a lot of things that make that a little fantasy show than reality.
Yes. Yeah. 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 How about coming up with a design concept and bringing it to life with your own garment construction skills?
uh, well, yeah, I would say like some of my ideas were great. Did I execute them correctly? Maybe not. I know, like the dress I had in my collection, I think it was um, uh, ambitious. um, and I ended up having to change some things in the end, which was okay, but I really want to remake it because it didn't turn out like I wanted. And I think, I was kind of a victim to my fabric at that point where it was what I had. So I had one shot and the muslin turned out, but then when in the fabric, it didn't quite make like it did in the muslin. So I had some challenges there, but with Marva's help, she definitely helped me get through that dress.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes we do something and it doesn't come out perfectly right the first time around, but then we try again and we learn our lessons from it. Yeah, makes sense.
Yes.
And overall, this is just kind of like an overall question. Are you happy with the skills that you gained at the Fashion Lab?
Absolutely. I, you know, having the small class size, the attention, I never felt like we were lumped into a group. You know what I mean? Like there was enough individual attention that, I think for Marva, she would keep each of us, doing what we needed to be doing. It wasn't like, come on, everybody, keep up or, get out. And so, if you did get behind or you got ahead, she would make sure you were on track. And that was important. I really enjoyed having the small class, you know, we have an hour for lunch and I'm like, we could go for a half an hour. That'd be fine. Let's just sew some more, you know. But I will say, my class was really, we had a great camaraderie. We still are connected. We're challenging each other at this point to continue to grow and, sharing our successes with each other. It was a lovely experience for me.
That's great, Stacy. Yeah, that was one of the best things for me to see you guys bond over the course of time and develop true friendship based on a mutual interest. So
Yes.
that was really special to see. And let me ask you some wrap-up questions now. What do you wish you'd known when you joined Le Fashion Lab? Anything come to mind?
What do I do? Um, I would say probably to be a little more organized. I felt like I was organized in like thought, but in the long run, like some of my patterns are a little messy now. I can see my little messy pile over here. Um, just like I kept them all. They're already packed. I kept them all in the manila folders, but like um, at the end when you're like creating the same pattern for the third time, it that incarnation didn't get thrown away, and so then it's like, wait, which one was the right one? I know there were some people, I was not this person, but labeling is so important when you're working with your patterns on, just putting the date on it. And, is this your final, is this your updated one? Just knowing, I started to symbol things, you know what I mean? Like everything got a star. So I knew that was the newest one, or that type of thing. I wish that I had made like study kits at the beginning, like, just like a welt pocket kit, and made like 10 of them. And then, every week just making another one. Like that's something, and I can still do that. I just wish I'd done it throughout the class.
So that's good. So you said make notes. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah,
Stay
taking.
super organized, especially with your patterns and labeling them properly, and then just practice, practice, insane practice.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It all pays off in the end. It's, if you're going to invest yourself and time into something, and especially, in today, like who knows where where any of this is going right now, but this is a creative, it's not, we're not, we're not saving lives with fashion. I don't want to be, glib, but it is a, you know, this is a creative outlet, and you should invest yourself. If you're going to invest in this, you should invest the time and attention that it needs, you know. It's not to say that you can't multitask and, you know, work the rest of the days, but you just need to make sure you're giving yourself that time and time to be successful.
That makes sense, Stacey. That's good advice too for anybody considering joining the Fashion Lab. And now your expert opinion again. Who would you say is an ideal Fashion Lab candidate? What traits and desires should this person have?
Well, someone who's curious, I think, being interested in learning. I'm a child of Mr. Rogers and love picture and, you know, understanding the why of things. And I would say that this is something you should want to understand how things go together. It's not, a great example, like being a realtor isn't just about looking at houses. There is a lot more to that role than just looking at houses. And same with fashion. There's more to it than just making pretty drawings or or sewing a glamorous outfit. There's a lot more involved than you think. There's hundreds of different roles within the fashion industry. And I think one thing this does give you is an exposure to a very broad picture of what you can do with this education. I, you know, have a lot of aspirations of doing things on my own initially. And that's just the environment we're living in today. You know, 2 years from now, we may all be back in an office somewhere and new roles will have opened up. I know for me personally, I was really hoping to get into children's wear and, you know, work downtown and have that, you know, kind of groovy life, but that's not going to happen now. So it's important to be flexible. And for me, when I began, I was like, I don't want to put myself into a hole where I only want to be a pattern drafter at the end of this. I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into not being able to grow, you know, not being able to say like, oh, wow, I really enjoy this. I want to dive deeper. I think making that dress for that contest piece really sparked something in me to dig deeper into dressmaking, to dig deeper into how to incorporate embroidery in another way. And, you know, putting it all together in the format in a year, I mean, it's just like it went so quick. It's like, it's already been a year. It's amazing to me. But putting it all together to give you this great understanding, you know, even I work in a sewing shop now, I feel so much more confident about what I'm speaking about with customers because of what I've learned at the Fashion Lab. I don't, I feel like I have a real steady base to stand on and say, no, that's not how you do that, you know.
Good,
Yeah.
Stacy. So one of the skills or one of the traits you just mentioned is keeping open-minded. That's what you said, right? And
Oh, yeah.
that's something I've said to people as well. Like you mentioned, this is a vast industry with many different nooks and crannies and many different like applicable skill areas. And when you enter a program of study, you want to kind of remain open to every single avenue that
Yeah.
it has to offer you. Someone has said to me before, someone I met previously, and their interest was in sketching and fashion illustration, so much so that the other skills were somewhat ignored and not developed. And that's something I've said before, you don't know where the opportunities are going to come. So you want to remain open to every single skill area so that when opportunities present themselves, you are prepared. to take advantage.
Absolutely. I got asked a lot during the course of the school, like, well, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? It's just like, I need to finish and put it together and then understand, do I love drawing more than I love sewing? Do I love embroidery more than I love, quilting or whatever it is? It is. I mean, I even found that my quilting skills have increased immensely because of this too. I whipped out a baby blanket in like a day because I was like, oh, well, like I just am sewing faster. I'm more confident. I'm I feel so much better about my skill set.
Yeah, Stacy, thank you so much. I knew this would be a good chat because you're very honest and you're a direct communicator. And it's been our pleasure working with you. You're one of those that put in the work, even though you say you wish you had put in even more work, but you put in the work and it has shown. We've enjoyed working with you. But I think one thing that I keep saying to you is as much as your year journey with us is up, we will continue to open our doors and our hearts to you. So just know that we are there for you. And if there's anything that you need along the way, we're just a text message, email, phone call away. So we'll be there for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for taking the time to share your experience, your 1 year The Fashion Lab experience with others. I know it will be very helpful.
Yeah, if I could just close on, open mind and just work. It's a wonderful investment.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
Yeah.